On the eve of Christmas Eve, are we working? We live? We
We
good?
are live.
On the eve of Christmas Eve, on the eve of New Year's Eve 2020, which by the way, people are can't wait till 2020 is over. 2021 is gonna be so much better, hopefully. And they had the hopefully on, and I'm just like, you know what? 2020, it could be so much worse. And I get it. There's people that are battling sicknesses and all that stuff, and I feel for that. But 2020 could have been so much worse. 2021 will not be any better unless you decide to look in the mirror and say, okay, it's up to me. 99% of this thing is up to me, my mindset, how I'm feeling about myself, how I'm feeling about what I'm doing, how much energy I bring to the table, how much positivity and gratitude I bring to the table every single day. But just especially over the last like 2 or 3 weeks when people have said, man, 2020, can't wait till it's over. I'm just like, and 2020 has been so hard. I'm like, it could be 1,000 times worse for 99% of us. Let's be honest. Yes, there's the 1% that have, really probably been hit hard. But it could be way worse. And that's what I'm hoping that 2021 isn't worse. Right. But that being said, too, just reflecting before we're going to get into some Q&A, we're podcasting from my house today. So we're looking at the lake out there and seeing some birds and eagles fly and geese fly or whatever. Actually, no eagles yet. Eagles were a couple days ago, but filming from my house today. Been taking a little bit of time off. We got a big deal that's in the pipeline that we're supposed to close mid-January. So been working on that. Been working half days from home. Really haven't left my house in right or like 5 days, which is impressive. I haven't taken a break at all since August 2019 when my now wife and I went to Paris. So it's kind of been nice to be able to sleep into like 7:30, stay up till 10, 11:30, read some books. Haven't read many. I've read more in the last like week, like from a book, which I'm reading right now, the RJR Nabisco book and how the leveraged buyout of that company back in the late 80s, which is another recommendation now that I'm reading it. I'm halfway through, and the first half of the book, I'm just kind of rambling here, but that first half of that book, it's about private equity and investing, and there's a lot of lessons to be learned in it. But the first maybe quarter of the book is all about the background of RJR and Nabisco and like KKR and leveraged buyouts and private equity. And then like where I'm at right now in the middle half of the book is where they're really starting to hash out the deals in terms of the deal. And there's multiple buyers looking to buy them and take the company from being a publicly traded company and taking it private. And they're working on raising the funds for it and working on the terms. And it's just super interesting book. So if you're into private equity, if you're into the books that I'm reading, because I know it's a question I get. I think last week actually we had a question on what are your top 5 books. I think this one's sneaking into the top 10 by the time it's said and done. Maybe even top 7, maybe top 5. I don't think it'll break my top 3, but it's creeping up there. Really good book. It's long. It's like 520 pages, but I'm into it now where I can't put it down. So been able to do that. And think a lot about 2021 and what's coming up. 2020 for us, just looking back, has been unbelievable year. I mean, number one, everyone's healthy in my family and close friend set and all that stuff. So that's important. And then we started a painting company. We're on pace to do just south of $1 million in our first 12 months of operations. We didn't close any deals or buy any apartments this year, but we've pushed the envelope, and we fourth quarter of this year of 2020 we were able to get something under contract and hopefully closing on it at the very beginning of 2021. And then we have some other deals in the pipeline that we kind of got into our pipeline and started shoving through our pipeline quarter 3, quarter 4. So I got married this year. So 2020 has been an awesome year, and I think we all can find a lot of awesome things out of it. But once again, it's what you make it out to be. I wasn't gonna just go in my COVID ball and die in a corner, and I wasn't going to live in fear. And I know that, it's easy to let fear and let the media and let all this stuff overcome your life. But at the same time, it's like, we only have so much time on this earth anyways. And, also when you look at some of the most successful people, whatever the field is, they make their biggest strides and their biggest gains and all this stuff in times of panic and in times of fear. And so immediately when this thing happened, I knew we weren't going to be able to close deals right away because of some of the thresholds you had to meet as far as like how much you had to put down, like back in March and April. I mean, it was, and the reserves that you had to come to the table with, it just didn't make sense. And people just stopped showing their properties. So I'm like, all right, what can I do? I started the painting company, right? And right in the middle of that, I mean, literally 2 weeks after actually it might have been 7 days, 10 days after the world shut down. I formed Prime Painters, and we got started and got rocking and rolling. So just been doing a lot of planning for 2021. Been doing that since the third quarter really, and kind of finalizing some of those things because we really want to push the envelope in Prime Painters, take that to a $2.5 million company in 2021, get up to 2,000 units by the end of 2021, which right now we're sitting at just shy of 500, 482. And we'll be at, if this deal closes, we'll be at about 700. And then with what we have in the pipeline, I think, by the middle of the year, we can for sure be at, 1,100, 1,300 if some things fall into place. Will it happen? I don't know, but we're going to fight for it. So that being said, that's a little bit of a recap, just as we wind down 2020, 2 days ago, December 30th, right? Yeah. New Year's Eve. We're on the eve of New Year's Eve. So I think right now we can jump into some questions. I had a lot of questions come in actually after the last one ended that people wanted to sneak in the first episode. So some of those rolled over to this episode. And then, I just basically yesterday I said, hey, Ryder, we want to do a podcast tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
So once again, I want to do one once a week. So we got a snowstorm here in Wisconsin. So I'm like, hey, let's just do it by tomorrow. So I posted last night, hey, get your questions in. And we got, a handful of questions. I wasn't able to take all of them, but we got like another 13 or so, 14 or so that we'll try to cover. If you're joining us live, please share the link. That'd be awesome. If you're watching the recording, please share the link. That would be awesome. Would mean a lot. Subscribe to the channel. We're going to be doing the podcast live on YouTube going forward. Try to bring more YouTube content over the next year. So question number 1 for today. How many people we got live right now? I'm always curious on that. 4. Okay, so our number's down from last year. The first episode is always like it's just like a trap. It's like, oh yeah, we can do this, and then all of a sudden you get 4 live viewers. But we got a lot of great feedback on the first episode. So we're gonna roll with it, and we're gonna get a lot of great feedback on this episode. What's the process of getting loans approved for buying your first investment property? So for the first property, a lot of times, I think back, okay, well, to get into the shoes of the person that's probably asking this question, I'm going to go back to what it was like for me, right? Well, I had to find someone else to help invest in the deal and secure the debt, right? I couldn't, I wouldn't have been able to do that alone when I first started, even on a 4 unit that was $200,000. So if you're in a position where you can't get a loan by yourself, you got to go find a partner, whether that's it can be an equity partner or just someone that's willing to, for some type of payment, back the debt on it for X amount of time. But you have to be able to find someone. For me, my family invested. It wasn't like a forgivable loan. It wasn't like they still have equity. They invested $20,000. I invested $20,000, and we went out and we were able to get the loan. So I wouldn't have been able to do it alone. So if it weren't for my family, I would have had to go and hit the streets earlier than what I did, because now I'm raising money from all types of people, right? But I would have had to hit the streets earlier to be able to find someone to help me get the loan. And I guess I don't know if that's the question as far as like how do you get it, but you might have to find a partner. Diving more into the minutia of what all you need and the kind of like what banks look for. I mean, banks are going to look for a personal financial statement. So you need to stay on top of that stuff. I update my personal financial statement quarterly. Every single month I'm reconciling on Quicken. I'm reconciling my bank accounts, my personal bank accounts, right? And then quarterly I use all that stuff, and I use the value of our investments and all that stuff. And as we're paying down debt, I basically revalue everything. And I update my quarterly financial statement because the bank is going to ask for that. And as you start to grow, it's like you're needing to supply that information all the time, and it needs to be up to date every quarter. So that's why we do it quarterly. So get your personal finances straightened out because you're going to need it, right? And even if it's nothing to start with, like you got to have your income statement and your balance sheet, the personal ones, at your personal level. You're going to need of the property that you're buying, because we're talking property here, of the property that you're buying, you're going to need rent roll. You're going to need the trailing 12 months. And the trailing 12 months, what that is the last 12 months of operations. It takes seasonality out of it. So it's not just like if you're looking to buy the deal in August of 2021, that means you would have needed August 2021 financials all the way back through September 2020. Does that make sense? August 2021. You'd go back all the way through September 20th. You'd take October 2020, November 2020, December 2020, January 2021, February 2021, March 2021, all the way through to August 2021, so that the bank, the lender, can see the performance of the property, right? You're going to need delinquencies and what those delinquencies are currently and what they've been over the last 30, 60, 90 days, 90 days plus. They're going to want to know if there's been bad debt. They're going to want to know your business plan. They're going to want to know the condition of the property and what upside might be out there. So you need to kind of have like a 1-page, 2-page business plan of what you're going to do once you own it to maintain the value if it's already a really great asset, or what you're going to need to do step by step kind of to add value, and then what that added value is going to represent to the financials, right? So when I say what that value is going to represent to the financials, how much the rent's going to go up when you redo a kitchen? How much are the expenses going to go down if you do low flow toilets and put in, you know, energy efficient light fixtures in the common areas, right? So you got to have kind of a plan showing the way. And not everyone does it this way. I'm very organized. I think that when you're organized, when you've got a plan, and when you can talk about that plan and show that plan to a lender, they're gonna be like, wow, this guy or gal is ahead of the game. They came here with a very, you know, professional 1 or 2-page package showing me what they're going to do. A lot of people don't do that. It'll set yourself apart. So those are some of the things, and what the process is like. Obviously the bank's going to get appraisals. They might need an environmental on the property. They might need a survey on the property, which your attorney or, you know, legal or the title company can help you, you know, get all set up. So that's that. I hope that answered your question. Whoever asked that question, you're watching, you can always ask another question or ask it another way if I didn't touch on it on the right way. Question number 2, do you track your personal transactions daily with Excel? I don't do them daily. Every month, at the end of the month or towards the end of the month, I'll reconcile. So I'll go through and make sure, you know, and I find mistakes on the banks, you know, a handful of times a year, or the credit card companies and stuff like that, where there's a false charge or not my charge, or someone charged too much or double charge, whatever. Most people don't catch that stuff. I'm on top of that stuff. And even though it's a small amount of money, a lot of times I'm just on top of it. So monthly, I do my stuff. I'm reconciling my loans that I have personally, making sure that I've separated how much principal I've paid off versus how much interest, making sure that my principal balances on those loans are current and correct with the statements. So I'm always getting the statements at the end of the month, bank accounts, credit cards, all that stuff. And I'm balancing them to make sure that they're correct. They match the statement, and that the statement isn't wrong, and there isn't something wrong that's going on the other end with the other parties, which does happen. And sometimes just to stay caught up, because it can kind of get to be a lot if you wait till the end of the month. I will do it like mid-month. I'll start doing it up until that point, and then finish it up once I get the statements and all that stuff. But then once again, if you're on top of that, it's easy to do your personal financial, because you'll just get in a routine, and then you know that every quarter you've got to add the personal financial statement to that list while you're reconciling your accounts. So yeah. Next question. Joel, what's up, man? Good morning. Ryder's having some issues here with the screen. I don't know what you guys are seeing, but
No, that's just for you, so you can read chat.
Okay, so they can't see that?
Yeah, no, okay.
I can't see the full question either.
Yeah, you're right. Let me just close that out.
I mean, you know, last week, if you watched this, my face was kind of blurry. At the end of the show, Ryder goes, "Oh crap, I didn't. What did you not do?"
I didn't. It wasn't all the way focused.
It wasn't all the way focused on my face, so I sit down. Ryder realizes 3 minutes in, right?
It's because I set it up before you came in. So
he set all this thing up before I came in the room. I come in the room. I sit down and start the podcast. He recognizes 3 minutes after. He's like, "Oh, I didn't want to just say something." I'm like, "Dude, my face is blurry the whole time."
It wasn't bad.
It wasn't bad, but hopefully it's better today. So
it's great.
I gotta give Ryder some crap every now and then. How long did you study real estate before buying your first property? I started getting books. I started going to seminars. I started getting around people and networking with people who were doing what I wanted to be doing in 2009. And I didn't buy my first property until 2013. So it was about 3.5, 4 years of learning. And I think I was slow on the learning curve. I mean, I know that there's guys out there that, like, you know, going back, that's the one thing. I could have started earlier, because I could have started implementing more aggressively earlier. Part of it was, in 2009, I mean, I was a sophomore in college, so I was playing college football, right? And that was my focus. I love playing college football. So to me, I didn't necessarily want to get started then. But even through that time though, I did start to implement what I was learning from the standpoint of like, I was looking at deals. I'd still go out and look at deals. I would, get the financials on them. I would get the rent rolls. I would say, hey man, if I own this thing, how could I, I could probably find someone to cut the grass for less. I could find a lesser cost for trash removal, and all that stuff. So I was already implementing what I was learning. I just didn't actually pull the trigger on a deal until 2013. And that was just my timing. So some people might need to learn for 7 years. Some people are probably able to pick up. I mean, really, if you're in a position where you really want to make a change and really want to go after this thing, there's no reason that you cannot start with zero knowledge and halfway through 2021 already have a property under contract or closed on halfway through 2021. No doubt about it in my mind. But it's a matter of getting after it, putting yourself in a position to learn. But then even more important than learning is executing, going out and implementing what you learn, starting to take the steps. Those are always, people are always asking me, how come you read less now? It seems like you read less books. And I'm like, because I spent so much time early on reading that now when I'm reading operating agreements, I'm reading financial statements, I'm reading certain like current events and all this stuff. I'm doing less reading in books because I'm writing a freaking book now, right? So there's got to be a fine line too between like, don't just sit there and consume as you need to, and then go out and start implementing, because you're going to learn far more by being out in the field and doing this stuff than you will sitting behind a book or a computer. Don't get me wrong. It's important. I sell classes. I sell books. So I'm a fan of like you guys behind that stuff, right? But at the same time, no book or class is ever going to be the ultimate difference maker if you're not willing to put in the work to go out and do it. So, but then at the same time, I'm always studying. I'm always learning. This deal we got under contract right now, I mean, I've learned a ton. Every deal that I do, I learn more and more. It's like, when we closed on 199 units, I learned way more. And I felt like coming out of that deal, and that was the last deal we did, which was a year and 2 months ago, the 199 unit. I came out of that deal once we closed. I'm like, I learned 2 times more during these last 90 days of closing that deal than I previously even knew in real estate. And I already had hundreds of units at that point, and I already had transactions that, we're in the million, 7 figures. And the same thing with this deal. This big deal that we got on our contract now, is somewhere between 25 and 50 million bucks. And I've learned more on this deal than I feel like I've ever learned combined. Joel, just real quick, asked he asked in the live chat, do you have a realtor license, or use a realtor for purchasing properties? I do have a license, and Spaulding Group is a brokerage. But to me, I'm indifferent. I don't care if I'm the realtor or not. I mean, to build what I'm trying to build, I need more than just myself. I need other people. So it is what it is. It helps because of certain fees and stuff that I do qualify for in certain transactions, but by no means do you need it to get started. Next question. Real estate, valuation of properties, due diligence, and financials. Ryder, do you know who asked this question?
No.
Ava did.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I know Ava, I'm 99% sure Ava asked this question, our controller at Spaulding Group. And I don't necessarily know the question. I just wanted to include it because it's not necessarily a question, but real estate, valuation of properties, due diligence, and financials. And I think what she's kind of hinting at is what we talk about all the time. Real estate and business is crazy, right? So whether it's, I'll talk a little bit business side and I'll talk a little bit real estate side. So real estate right now, the going cap rates are between 5.5% to 6%, and the cap rates are between 5.5% and 6%. And what that means is once you find the net operating income, you then apply the cap rate to it, which is kind of like an inverse calculation that you have to do. It's not a multiplier; it's an inverse multiplier essentially. But you take the cap rate to the NOI, and that's how you figure out the value of the building. And a lot of it is a financial game, essentially, where if you got to be smart enough where if you're putting in, if you're completely remodeling a unit that's going to take the apartment rent from, $800 a month up to $1,100 a month, that expense or that outflow of dollars you have going out towards that project isn't actually on your income statement. Going towards your net operating income, it's below the net operating income as a CapEx figure. And what a lot of people don't a lot of people don't realize that the difference between like what's a capex and what's actually an expense. An expense is a reoccurring thing that's always going to happen once the property's stabilized. So what we do is we're always diligent, and the reason that we can go through and get really good deals is because we're playing the accounting game how the accounting game is supposed to be played. Because investments into the property to increase revenues or lower expenses are not actual they're not actual expenses that go towards the net operating income. So what we will do is we'll make these investments, and then as time goes on, our rents increase and our expenses will stabilize, and there will be less going out from a capex standpoint, but we'll have our revenues, they've gone up. We'll have the operating expenses subtracting from those revenues, which give us the NOI. Now, the operating expenses are things like the on-site management, so payroll, it's the insurance costs, it's the general repairs and maintenance to fix an appliance, to fix flooring, to fix a leak, to unclog a toilet, to do touch-up paint of a unit when a tenant moves out of a unit that's already been remodeled for us is how we handle that. Contracted services, so lawn mowing, pest control, elevator contracts if you have those. What else we have there? Administrative costs like office supplies and costs for your software. That's all operational expenses. So you're going to take the revenue minus the operational expenses. Then you're going to have the NOI. The NOI is what's going to give you the NOI and the cap rate is what's going to give you the value. So a lot of times we're able to really shift the NOI drastically and increase it. And for every dollar that falls to the NOI that we can increase the NOI, that's about $16 that it's going to add to the value of the building. And when I'm saying the value, that's the purchase price or what you can go refinance against or what you can go sell it for. So a lot of this is an accounting game, and being smart with the dollars that you have, and then looking at those dollars and say, okay, is this an actual regular expense? Or is this an expense that's going into the asset to make the asset more valuable, as Ava says, and to increase the rent or drop expenses? And it's more of like something that's going to come out of the cash flow and be a cash out item every 5 years or every 10 years or every 15 years. It's not a normal regular thing like lawn mowing is. Lawn mowing is a regular normal thing that's an actual expense. Now, with some of these properties, we're dropping down to, towards a 5% cap rate. So if we're at a 5% cap rate, now every dollar that drops to the bottom line is one, it's basically 1 divided by 5%. So 1 divided by 0.05 gives you 20. So now you've increased it $20, the value of the property. So if you can go through, and I'm gonna get my calculator out really quick. So when I'm looking down, that's what I'm looking at. But now when we're going through, and let's say we have a 400 unit apartment building, and let's say we can raise rents $20, right? So we got 400 units times 20, that's 8,000. That's 8,000, right? 8,000 times 12 for annual, because this is an annual number. The NOI has to be on an annual basis when you apply the cap rate to it in order to find the value, because it's basically figuring out what someone is going to pay for a cash flow. Right? For cash flow into someone's pocket, what's an investor willing to pay? So 96,000 is the answer there. So we took 400 units, multiplied by 20, we got 8,000. That's $8,000 a month more of revenue. That revenue, theoretically, most of that's dropping to the bottom line if it's just because the rents are under market. $8,000 a month times 12 months is $96,000. Let's take a 6% cap rate to that. That's $1.6 million of value that you just added to the deal. So if you bought that deal for, $30 million, now it's worth $31.6 million. A lot of times we'll go through and, another thing that might be, so like you might have people that have pets in the apartments already that you're buying. And so what we do is on the lease renewal, we're going to add our pet fee. I think in some states you can't do this and add a pet fee. Wisconsin, you can. So we're going to add a pet fee. Well, if you have a 100 unit apartment building, and let's say 30% of the tenants have pets. So that'd be 30 units. 30 units times $30, that's monthly, is 900. Times it by 12, that's 10,080. Divide by 0.06. The 0.06, once again, is a 6% cap rate. That's $180,000 of value you just unlocked there because the increase of the NOI, and then you take the cap rate. Ryder, does this make sense to you? Yes. If it's making sense to you, you're a beginner a little bit too, but you're pretty sharp. Not saying our listeners aren't sharp. But so is this making sense?
Yeah, I've heard it.
Yeah, and you've heard it a lot of times from me too. Now you divide that 10,800, divide that by, if it's a 5% cap rate, depending on where you're at, that's $216,000. Now, if you're starting to be able to do multiple things at once, like raise the rents $20 a month for just standard as a standard because they're under market, you don't need to do anything in apartments, and you're able to do the pet fees on top of it, right? Well, now you've added $1.8 million, right? Now, if you can drop the water bill by $10 a unit per month by doing low flow, right? You might have another 500,000 there, right? So now your total, when you add all those up, you start at 2.1 million. $3 million of value, $6 million of value. So a lot of it is an accounting game. And when I say game, it's not illegal. It's just knowing where things actually belong and what's an actual investment, what's an actual reoccurring operating expense when it comes to real estate. Now, and what's a normalized expense. Now, the same thing when I'm evaluating prime painters or a business. Businesses don't necessarily have a cap rate. Businesses have a multiple on earnings. And so there was a company that we sold, and I'll just talk a little bit about this. There's a company that we sold, and the first thing the company did is they started letting some people go. And so I'm sitting here, I'm like, well, it's smart of this company because if they already have the infrastructure where they don't need all the people in the middle that were previously there, and if they can cut out $3 million of salaries annually, and if they're trading at 15 times earnings, right? Let's say it's $3 million of salaries they save times 15, that's $45 million of value they added to the deal the day after it closed, just because they had size already, just because they had an infrastructure already. So when you guys are hearing me talk about building an infrastructure, it's so that when we take on assets, the assets are going to get the most attention, the most bang for their buck, and we're going to be able to raise the value of the property and hopefully have less waste. We have more efficiencies. Right? And so let's talk about prime painters. Prime painters, there's a lot of things that are normalized expenses in our first year of operations. The paint that we're buying, the tape that we're buying, the masking paper, rosin paper that we're buying, those are all normal things. The salaries of our, or the wages of our painters, the gas that our trucks use, the gas that our power washers use, those are all normal things, right? The equipment, some of it's normalized that you're going to buy every year. Some of it's not because it's going to last a long time, right? So it's deciphering between those. Whatever's going to last a long time, that's not necessarily a business expense. So don't count it towards your earnings. And earnings are basically free cash flow after your revenue, your operating expenses. Then you have your earnings. What cash is left for an owner if he's not active in the business for an owner to take out? If he's just as an investment. So if we're looking at prime painters, and I'm doing a lot of things in prime painters right now and have a lot of expenses right now that aren't actual operating expenses. We're spending way more. If you look at the first year, we're spending way more on advertising and marketing than we technically should be if you talk to the experts and the pros, because I'm trying to build a brand and people got to hear about us. People got to know about us. So that extra expense, if I were to go and sell the company, I'd actually take that out. Because, and once again, it'd be a negotiation with the buyer, but I'd be trying to take that out because it's not a normal expense. Once we build a brand, we don't have to keep spending the same percentage of revenue. And as our revenue grows, we don't have to keep spending that same percentage to keep building and driving home that brand as we get bigger. There's a lot of equipment that we had to buy year one. Those wouldn't technically count towards, and we had a lot of setup fees, right? So that stuff wouldn't technically count towards the earnings and the free cash flow, because going forward, year three, that's not going to look the same. So if my earnings are, someone might sit and look at my earnings like, hey, there's only $50,000 of earnings here through the first 8 months of operations. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, well, actually, there's probably more like $180,000 of earnings, because a lot of these things are non-normal expenses. They're startup expenses. They're investments that we're not going to have to make again for some of them ever, for some of them for 4 years, 5 years, 10 years on some of the equipment and stuff like that. So, and then I'm like, hey, and then when you annualize this, now annually, our earnings already right now are like $215,000 a month. You take a multiple of those earnings. Now, our company's smaller, so it might be a multiple of 3 times the earnings, 3x, 4x, 5x. I've just been saying 3x for now. So that gives us, Prime Painters being worth almost $750,000 right now as a company if I were to look to sell it off. And we just started it from scratch, right? But now as we grow to a $5 million company, and as we have, ballpark 20% of that's going to be earnings, we'll have $1 million of earnings. Now we've got more structure in place. For more structure and infrastructure and processes in place and standards in place, you get a higher multiple, because when someone comes in and buys it, they can just let it keep running. They don't have to dive in, because the infrastructure, they just got to make sure the infrastructure stays alive and keeps the gears stay in place. So now that $1 million of earnings is probably, in the painting industry, could probably sell at 5 times earnings. So now the million times 5, you got a $5 million company. When you're at $5 million of revenue, something like that, ballpark, right? And when you find the multiple, the company that we sold was a 15 to a 20 multiple because of the size. I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar company that bought it. So the size that they have and the size of our company that they bought was substantial enough that the system and the brand and all this stuff, and because of the sector and industry that it's in, is very hot right now. The multiple is 15 to 20 times the EBITDA, which EBITDA is earnings. So that's a little bit of the valuation of properties, valuation of businesses. I skipped the due diligence, I skipped the financials, because that could be like, I could literally talk about that, I think, for like 6 days straight. I could have probably talked about that topic. But we got some side questions over here. Josh Eastman, I think it's a good. What the hell does that
I
say?
couldn't read it either. Tory.
I think it would be good, would be how you calculate some of those costs. Not sure which costs though. Josh, if you're still here, ask your questions again, because there's one big Joe Biden word in there that Joe would have said on the podium, and probably will say today. Tory agitation would. All right. Sal, thank you for the Casas. Glad to be here. He says, man, thanks for joining us. Those of you watching live, what, 4 people?
10.
Oh, damn, 10. My mom and dad are watching, so that's 2. Your mom and dad are watching, that's 4.
Yes.
We count as 1, 5. My wife's probably watching downstairs, 6. 60% of the audience is family and friends. All righty.
How it starts.
How to structure deals and find investors if you don't have a lot of capital but want to start. You got to tell people where you're headed, what you're doing, what you're wanting to do, and you got to get out there and talk to 100 people. Go talk to 100 people between now and January 15th. Tell them your plan. You're going to find someone that'll back you. I promise it. Out of 100 people, if you're willing to put everything that you have, and you might have $10,000 of savings when you say you don't have a lot, you might have $20,000 of savings. And if that's all you got to your name, but you're willing to put that $20,000 on the line into the deal, and take you to zero, and then you say, hey, I'm gonna take care of this deal. Here's the upside of it. You'll be able to find an investor, but you got to be able to talk to people, network. You can't be scared about telling people where you want to go, what you want to be doing. You can't be scared of what they're gonna say. People make fun of me all the time for a podcast. People make fun of me all the time, and some very successful people make fun of me for the things that I do and I put out there, and they think it's egotistical and whatever. I could care zero. I do not care zero, because they don't understand what I'm ultimately trying to do. I'm trying to help a ton of people. I'm trying to grow my brand. I'm trying to bring more investors in by using all these tools that we have. So, and the same thing with my investing goal. I tell people I want to have 50,000 units. Literally, there's people that laugh. I started saying that in 2012 when I had 0, and the first time I said it, someone laughed, and I said, no, really. And so they didn't really take me serious. And I just don't care. You got to be in the mindset of like, you do not care what other people think. And I think that goes back to the whole COVID thing too, of lay down in your ball and like, hope this thing gets over, because you're scared of what people are going to say. And it's like, dude, you got to live your life. You cannot care about other people's opinions all the time. 50% of the people are going to absolutely hate your guts, and 50% of the people are going to love you. Look at the presidential election. 50% of people hate Joe Biden. 50% of the people love him, right? And so 50% of the people hate Tom Brady. 50% of the people love him. So when you're successful at your craft, when you're good at what you're doing, when you're just starting something, there's going to be a lot of naysayers. There's going to be a lot of, and you just can't care. And so your question, start finding capital. You cannot care what anyone else, what mom and dad, your aunt and uncle, your grandpa and grandma, your sister, your brother, your cousins, your second and third cousins. You cannot care what your best friend from 6th grade says. You can't care what your best friend from college says. You can't care what your girlfriend necessarily says. You've got to be able to you got to be able to be fine with some of those people not agreeing with what you're doing. And so you got to put yourself out there. If you refuse to have courage, if you refuse to have cojones, if you refuse to like put yourself out there, you're never going to get to where you want to be when it comes to raising capital. That's the answer to that question. The Fish House Life, thanks for joining us. Guys, if you're watching the live stream, would appreciate it so much if you would share this. Uh, Josh,
Eastman.
how do we calculate certain expenses before buying a property? So Josh is just like due diligence and like calculating like what insurance is going to be and taxes are going to flip to and repairs and maintenance. I mean, for us, a lot of it is historical. We use the historicals, but then also we take into consideration what our current portfolio is doing, right? So there's a lot of people that, like we've done deals in the past where like someone will have an admin bucket, which includes, like certain accounting tasks, office supplies, software supplies, application fees. It'll be a bucket of expenses. And for someone else running a property, it might be $60,000 a year. But for us in our portfolio, I know that it's not going to, I know that we might be actually for this property like $32,000 a year based on what our current portfolio looks like, right? And same thing with insurance. Like insurance used to be an absolute crapshoot for me, but now we kind of have like a master contract. We have a much better idea of what our insurance is going to be. So I don't have to use the T12 number on the insurance. I can use what ours is actually going to be. I don't have to use the T12 number on all the administrative things because I know what our admin costs, depending on the type of property, the size of property, will be between $146 per unit annually up to $248 or something like $278 annually. So I know I have my numbers in a spreadsheet. I know my numbers, right? Same thing with contracted services. I know ballpark what we pay per acre of snow removal, per acre or half acre, whatever size you want. I know based on quantity and sizes how much we're paying for that stuff currently with our vendors. So again, if another company right now in an area we're already operating where we can use the same vendors, if their lawn care is $70,000 a year of lawn care and snow removal, I might be able to do a calculation and say, wait, ours will actually be closer to like 58,000, or I might realize, oh damn, ours is actually higher. Ours is going to calculate out to $78,000. So let me talk to this company that's doing it for 72, and maybe they're going to become a new vendor of ours, right? The repairs and maintenance, I'm pretty much using historical numbers. But then again, going back to the previous question that we talked about, I'm also trying to decipher out what actually would be CapEx if CapEx isn't already included in that, and what will go away if we're putting a lot of dollars into remodel units, knowing that if some people use a Band-Aid when they need to rip the whole thing out and fix the problem, right? And when owners use Band-Aids on a plumbing issue or whatever it might be, or appliances, and they just keep having these recurring expenses that they could just pay a little bit more to have the issue completely fixed for 5 years, and they don't. I try to figure some of that stuff out. I try to adjust our repairs and maintenance that way. So a lot of this thing, when I was first doing pro formas and the projections of properties, like the 88 unit building that we did, I was so far off. Years 1 and 2 was just unbelievable because I did not take for account like us having to redo the boilers, get new roofs, partial new siding. I didn't account for a lot of that stuff. And new garage doors, the amount of issues we already had in the deferred maintenance that was there. But we put a lot of capital into it in the front end, and now that property's cranking. So when you're first starting, what I would recommend doing is using the actual T12 basically to a T. But you're going to have to figure out like insurance and make sure that you're in a ballpark with an insurance agent, because a lot of people will actually underinsure their properties, believe it or not. And if there's a serious catastrophic event, they'll be in trouble. Real estate taxes are an interesting one. That's always... No, I know you do, Josh, but I know you know the answer, but it's a good question for everyone else. Real estate taxes, those are always a little bit tricky because depending on the area, the county, the city that you're investing in, the mill rates are all a little bit different. And the mill rate is basically a multiplier on the new value, and different areas have different mathematical equations on how they figure out, or different ratios that they use to figure out the actual assessed value. So like in Dane County, where we're buying properties, they'll take the purchase price, and they can figure it out through the deed. They'll take the purchase price, and what they will do is they'll take 85 to 92% of that purchase price. That'll be your assessed value. And then they'll take the tax rate to that number. So now I know that, so I can be pretty close with our taxes. I still am always a little high on my pro formas with taxes because it's like, hey, they could change this at any time. And real estate taxes seem to do nothing but go up. But we're always pretty close. So once again, that's a matter of looking up the property tax records online. You can go to the county, you can go to the city, you can go to the property address. And then what you can do is you can look at the tax bill, and this is public information. You can look at the tax bill, you can see the current assessed value, you can see the tax rate, you can see the assessment ratio usually. So then you just take your purchase price. Now, the same year, the first year that you buy the property, it'll be the old tax rate. It'll be the old tax amount. Whenever the property gets reassessed, that's when the taxes will go up. It could be next year, it could be 2 years from now, depending where you're at, it could be 3 years, 4 years from now. But you want to be aware of that because our tax bills, typically when we buy something, our tax bills, in some instances, if a property hasn't sold in 15, 20 years, our tax bills have gone on to double what they've been to the previous owner and what they were for the first year of operations for us. So that's probably the biggest one to make sure that you're kind of on the same page. And usually your lender can help you with this because they're always doing transactions. They're pretty on top of it. They are good at helping you get a ballpark. There's also tax consulting services out there that can help you figure that out. To me, it's not like I don't know. I don't even know how I used to calculate it, but it shouldn't be something that should prohibit you from doing a deal. You still got to find a way to make the deal work. Just recognize that, hey, your tax, depending on how long ago the property sold and what the current assessment is, that tax number could do anything from go up 10% to go up, to 2x in your year two, in the second or third year that you own it. So that's that. Okay, next question. Does promoted interest after preferred return decrease the investor's principal balance? So I think the question is relating to, some type of private equity setup or a fund setup like what we have. And for us, this is the terms of your agreement. So you can make the terms whatever you want it to be. You can make the, promoted interest decrease investors. And I think the language might be a little bit messed up here because the promote is actually coming to the general partner. So when we do a deal, how this works for us is basically there's the fund that has the Class A investors, and Class A investors are people that are putting cash in, and then it has Class B investors, who's the general partners who aren't actually putting any cash in. As general partners, though, we do buy shares as Class A. So I own our properties through Class A and Class B. Class B, I only get paid on my Class B shares in our properties if they perform and pay above a 6% preferred return to our investors. All the cash above and beyond that, 70% goes back to the investors. 30% is what we consider the promote, and the 30% goes back to the GP, essentially for $0, right? A $0 basis. That's all for performance. That's strictly a promote or a profits interest only. That 70% going back to the investors, for us, that just goes towards their total overall return. That 70% above the 6% preferred return does not lower their principal balance. The only things, once again, it could in your documents, it could for us in the future at some point. Currently, it's not how it's set up. The only time investors have their principal amounts reduced is in a cash event, and our definition in our operating agreements of a cash event is upon refinance or upon sale. So only sales proceeds or refinance proceeds that go back to investors will be what reduces their principal and capital accounts, if that makes sense. So good question.
You might want to answer that because it's a later question. I don't know if we'll get to it.
Which one?
The last two messages.
Casas says, I live in Southern California. I want to start raising equity, but don't think I should start here in California. Our state is crazy. Should I just look at starting in other states? For sure, because people are going to be leaving. People are already leaving New York like crazy, going to Southern Florida. People are already leaving California, going to Texas, going to Florida. So number one, the prices there in the The mountain to climb over to get involved and get started there because of prices is going to be hard if you're just starting. But you never want to buy on a budget. That's the first thing. It's one of the things with real estate. You don't want to buy on a budget. But I would get somewhere else that's a more business friendly state, or where people are moving to, or where the tax situation's a lot better. So yeah, I would look at other states. I would look at Texas. I would look at the Midwest. I would look at Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina. I would look at Ohio, Indiana, Michigan. Michigan's not, probably not Michigan, probably not Illinois. I don't look at anything in Illinois. I don't think I'd look at anything in Michigan. But Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee. There's places in Missouri. Minnesota is a place I would not go to. Iowa is a good place. So I would start looking at a lot of other places than California. I'd start looking at a lot of other places than New York and those Northeast states. What's more important to your cash on? What's more important to me, cash on cash or internal rate of return? For me, it's always been cash on cash. Just because I'm always like, okay, if I'm putting this cash to work, it's a simpler formula to figure out. But a lot of larger investors that we work with and with these funds and stuff, they're worried about the IRR. So it's become to this point where it's both. When I'm just getting started, I strictly just look at the cash on cash. Especially if you're looking at only a 5-year window, that's where I'd for sure look at cash on cash. A lot of times the IRR, I don't even know really how to explain IRR to a beginner. IRR is basically saying my return towards this option is basically this much more valuable than a return towards this option, because you're taking another interest rate and including that in the IRR calculation. So yeah, it just kind of depends on what you're looking for, but cash on cash is still what I mostly care about, and it's worked. But as I've started to do more, I've had to include the IRR calculations in all my things because the larger investors like to see the IRR. And actually, they like to see both though. They'll look at the cash on cash and the IRR both. I haven't yet come across anyone that's strictly just IRR, but they do. But a lot of people like to see it. So, how do your PM company structure look when you had much smaller portfolio? Management is hard without scale. Management is hard at scale. Management properties. I mean, I was talking to a guy that has 2,000 units. He's like, management just sucks. Like, I mean, so we view our management company as, I mean, I don't necessarily care if I'm making a profit there or not. I want to be able to effectively and efficiently run the properties with talented people, and have an infrastructure to support the assets. So we stopped doing third-party management because it's just like this, like you gotta grind it out to make a penny. It's just stupid. So, that's why we needed scale, right? Everyone's looking at, and I didn't like dealing with our own assets in third-party management either, because we didn't have the scale at 100 units, 500 units, even at 1,000 units. You don't have the scale to really have a quality third-party management company, in my opinion. You got to have 2,500, 4,000, 5,000 units to have a quality third-party management company who really can make enough money to really care to run your properties efficiently. And so that's why we're like, well, screw it. We're going to do our own. And I don't really care if it's profitable. But now when we're doing it our own, I have to have a certain number of assets. I can't just have one single family home like so many people want to go do. I got to be the person doing it then. With our 4 units, our two 4 units, I had to be available all the time to do it. And I couldn't go out. It was hard. It sucked up my time. I couldn't go out and buy new deals. So with us, you got to get to, basically to have a full-time property manager, a full-time maintenance person, you got to get to 100 units. 100 units on one site, 100 units on one site, or within a pretty tight geographical location where it's just a couple minute drive or whatever. That will be enough resources to get you one full-time, somewhat qualified person to manage properties and one qualified maintenance technician. But yeah, maintenance is tough because I've been talking to a lot of people who are doing what I'm doing, and they're all seeing what we're seeing, and turnover's decently high, but we're trying to change our culture a little bit. We're trying to change the type of people we're bringing in from the get-go to try to retain people and keep our retention up. But yeah, management is hard, not just without scale, but management is hard with scale. It's hard to manage assets, scale or no scale. Next question. Do you think it helps your credit to pay credit bills late so you get charged interest or pay early? No. Pay when it's due. So I don't pay early and I don't pay late. I've never you know, I don't know. We put between the properties and personally probably put 15, 20,000, well, and then Menard. I mean, we'll probably put 25,000, $35,000 of credit. We use credit regularly, credit cards regularly a month. Myself personally, I've never paid 1 cent of interest on a credit card ever. But I also do not pay them early. I schedule the payment on the due date. I from a cash flow perspective, I want to wait as long as possible to have an outflow, right? So no, don't get charged interest on those. Only put on credit cards what you're gonna be able to pay off by the due date before you're charged interest. And don't pay them early either. That's my opinion from a cash flow standpoint. How many people we got live?
6 now.
Cool. Hunter Price. Advantages and disadvantages of purchasing real estate in different entities, trusts, LLCs, etc. Every deal that we do, every business that we own is its own separate entity. So I don't know, we've probably got like 35 different LLCs, 35, 40 LLCs with how it's all worked out right now. And the advantages are just because it just kind of is widespread. It makes it harder for people to find all the assets and drag everything in. And just from a liability standpoint, you work with some lenders, they won't even, when you work with Fannie or Freddie, which are lenders that we're dealing with on a few deals, or a CMBS loan, I mean, you have to have single purpose entities that own the property. So yeah, we each, just from a liability standpoint and accounting standpoint, it's harder administratively. You have more tax returns, you got higher costs that way, but there's a lot of benefits to it as well from a liability standpoint. So it's something that we have always been advised to do, and it's something that we pretty much always do 99% of the time. What type of ROI would you be willing to pay on a 100K investment? So does this mean, I guess I'm not sure if I'm following the question. What type of return would I want if I had 100K and invested it? Or if you gave me $100,000, what rate would I want to pay you? I'm not sure if I'm understanding the question. I mean, I pay a preferred return of 6% to our investors. And then after that, it's a 70-30 split. I get 30, they get 70. Once it's a 12% annualized split, and this is with $50,000 or $100,000 or $5 million. Once it's a 12% annualized return for all those years, for not only the current year, but any previous year, it's a 50-50 split, all in cash going forward, 50% to me, 50% to the investors. If I have 100K, I'm looking for, it depends on the deal. I mean, I'm looking for something that's anywhere, year one, anywhere from 6% to 12% year one. Year two, anything that's anywhere from, in that same investment, as we go to year two, it should be between 7.5% to 14% and kind of keep growing. Ideally, I like to get that 100K of principal back as fast as possible, whether that's 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, so that I can then go put that principal to work. Once you put that 100K to work, you always want it to work again. If you get the principal back, so whenever I get principal back, like I said, we had a couple transactions over the last 2 years. All the principal, I was sure to put all the principal back to work. I never want to take principal out. And once I add to that principal, I never want to take that added principal out. I want the money to be working for me forever. So I've had cash events of, $750,000, $300,000, and I make sure that the initial principal has been all put to work. But I'm double, triple, quadrupling down. What would be after quadrupling? Sextupling my investment. Sextupling down, so 6xing down. And I've been putting all the profits as well. So I had $350,000 come to me in September. I think $100,000 of it was principal. And it was an investment that was held for 3 years, 4 years. And I still have $350 of the investment working in the investment. I only took 50% off the table. 50% was $350. I didn't just put the 100 back to work. I'm putting the full $350 to work because and so now that full 350 has become my principal or will become my principal. So I don't know if that helps answer your question or not, but next question. I read on several blogs the first place to start putting away money. And I read these questions out loud because I know we have a lot of people that listen to this while they're driving. So I'm reading the questions as we go. And I guess maybe I should have started saying that on episode 1. But so this is a longer question, kind of like a 2 or 3 part question. And I need a sip of water before I start reading because I'm going a million miles a minute here. And I'm getting thirsty. So the question is, I read on several blogs the first place to start putting money away after paying off debts is in an emergency savings account. How much do you recommend to have set aside for emergencies? And once you've reached that, where do you start investing next? Also, if I want to start a small business, is it more financially responsible to have a certain amount saved to invest in my business or take out a small loan? If it's the former, how much would you recommend having saved? So I guess the first question is about your lifestyle. I mean, for me, when I first started, I needed very little in emergency because I didn't have a family. I didn't have a house. I didn't have debts other than, my student loans. I didn't have the need for flashy things. I didn't buy a flashy car. So for me, it was relatively small. My emergency fund was like $2,000, if that, $1,000. If you have a family, you might want to have an emergency fund of $6,000, $7,000. Heck, I know people that have gotten their financial situations and lifestyles to a point where it's like, man, I need a $40,000 emergency fund. So it's a very opinionated answer based on the individual. But the less lean you live life, I mean, be as aggressive as possible. And the younger you are and the healthier you are, be as aggressive as possible, especially if you already have health insurance and stuff like that. So for me, I mean, I would say for most people, it's going to be between $1,000 and $5,000. If you have living expenses for 3 to 6 months, I would say that you're pretty well set. And then once you've reached that, where do you start investing next? So I'm going to start investing. The very first thing I'm investing in is things that are going to provide cash flow back into my pocket. This is why I can have the argument until I'm blue in the face about a home. The issue with a home is that it does not bring you an actual check or cash into your bank account every single month. So you want to find something and have the eye on something that can start to provide you income every single month. And a lot of times actually where you start investing next is in yourself. So you don't even worry about the actual cash flow at first. You worry about investing in yourself. You worry about buying the right books. You can buy $250 to $350 worth of books and it will open your mindset to a place of abundance and understanding where you can go out and figure out the rest of this. So you got to be able to invest in yourself. You got to be able to invest in your network. You got to be able to invest in knowledge, but then you've also got to be able to have the courage to go out and implement what you're learning. If you want to start a small business, is it more financially responsible to have a certain amount saved to invest in my business or take out a small loan? Real estate, you'll want to take out a loan. If it's like my painting company, we have zero debt there. My management company, we relatively have zero debt there. So with an actual business, my mindset is do not borrow. Do not go out and borrow against the bank, right away. If you need it to bridge a gap from where you currently are and you've been having success over the first 6 months or year in your business and you need to bridge a gap with some borrowed funds, then do that, but don't do that right away. Test your business out first, right? And then before you pay yourself, take the cash flow that business pays you, the profits that the business pays you, and put them back into the business. So now what you have to be able to do is you got to figure out what your actual expense is and overhead is to produce the widget or service so that then you can mark it up so that you for sure have a profit. And once again, the freaking Democrats and these people, they think that all this money of a service and all this revenue is going into people's pockets. No, we have a profit margin. We have a margin on all of our services so that we can take the money and plow it back into the business to get more ladders, to get more paint sprayers, to get a better software, to get more and better people, right? So you got to be able to figure out the costs, right? So let's say you've got, let's say you're in the picture selling business. You take awesome pictures. People are willing to buy the digital downloads from you to use as stock photos or whatever. What are the costs that you have in it? And then how many pictures do you want to sell or have to sell to have that cost covered, or to hit a certain profit margin? Or if it's just one, you're doing one of a kinds. Okay, what was the cost on this, and what do you want your margin to be? There's so many people that are out there that they'll go give. This is why we can beat and have a successful business versus the painter who's a great painter but doesn't understand business. The guy who's all by himself, who is a great painter, doesn't understand business, meaning he doesn't understand what his actual costs are. He's just like doing whatever to get the job. So he's bidding and not really making any money. He's maybe paying himself just for his time. Well, he's never going to build a big business there if he's just paying himself for his time. So you got to figure out, so like what we did, I figured out what it costs us per hour to have a painter in the field. And then I figured out how much they can produce. So now we have calculations on, we know how much our guys are basically doing on square footage per hour painting. We know how long and how many hours it takes them to tape off 40, 100, 200 linear feet of base trim, right? So we can calculate, and Ryder's been doing estimates, right, Ryder? We've got like 40 different things that you're looking at when you go out and do estimates that we got a calculator on, so that we know our costs, everything. Once we know our costs of our service, of our labor, once we know our costs of the product that we're going to use, how many gallons of paint, what type of paint, what our cost is on those, primer, tape, roller covers, whatever it might be. We've got everything, masking paper, rosin paper. We've got everything priced out. Now we've got our total costs by adding our labor costs and our material costs. We put that together, and now we've got a multiplier, or an inverse multiplier, because we're dividing by a number. We got an inverse multiplier that includes our profit and how much we want to mark it up. And so really, like when you're looking at like Walmart, things that they're buying, things that they're selling to you for $1, they're probably buying for anywhere between 20 cents and, take that back, depending on the product, it's things that they're selling for $1, they're probably buying for, and it costs them total, all in costs, it's probably costing them a total of 10 cents to 50 cents to buy the item, to pay for the shipping to get it there, to cover the labor and the burden of getting it on the shelves, and then they mark it up, right? Well, now what do they do with that markup, right? They got profits. They shove it back into employee bonuses, or, you know, to hire more people, to open more stores, to pay for more software in their stores, right? So you got to figure out your numbers. So that's what I would do, is if you're going to look to start a business, what's the business? Do it based off savings. Most businesses, I mean, I started the painting company with $4,000, and I was being aggressive because I was like, well, screw it. We're going to need this in a month. I'm just going to buy it now, right? I could have started the painting company for probably $800, maybe less than that. Probably less than that if I had to. Anyone can find a way to get $800 extra in their hands if they're just being smart about what they're spending. Everyone is so worried about having the newest iPhone that shouldn't have the newest iPhone. Dude, live on the one that's 3 years, 4 years old, and take that $1,000 and put it towards your business that you're talking about here. Buy 6 less pairs of shoes in 2021 so that you have $300 extra dollars there. Buy 5 less shirts so you have $250 extra there. Do not make your car payment go from $200 a month to $400 a month so that you can keep that $200 and put that towards your business, right? Now figure out what your business is going to be. Figure out how much time it takes you to get that product ready. Figure out how much the materials cost you. Figure out, you know, what your overhead is, right? I would think a picture, if you're selling pictures, you probably don't have much overhead there. It probably doesn't take you too much time. But now as you scale a business, you got to realize you're a business owner, but you also might be two people within the business. You might be the business owner / investor, but you also might be the employee. You, in your own company as an employee, should pay yourself the regular going rate for the employee. Just because you're the owner doesn't mean you should pay yourself more for the tasks you're doing as the employee. The money that you're making as the business owner should be the profits of what's left over after you reinvest it back into your business. Too many people are paying themselves, being the business owner, they're paying themselves doing employee tasks that they could be paying someone else $55,000 a year for.
they're paying themselves just because they're owner $300,000 a year. That's not how it works. It shouldn't work that way. Now, as you figure out your cost and your time, you can grow because someone else that you get on your team, the cost on that person, the burden should be the same as what it was for you if they're the true costs, right? And now you can put a profit margin, the same profit margin on those products, right? And so now you start to build an actual organization and infrastructure that then can go out and give you more dollars to work with. The more like profit is just a percentage, right? So whether it's 20% or 50%, whatever, you probably got to mark your products up 50% up. Basically, if it costs you $5, you probably want to mark it up to 10, 750 to 10. And then there's going to be more costs that you'll have in between that 5 and the 750 to 10. But then you'll have like 20% profit or so, or discretionary income, or what that you can then dump back into the business to help grow the business. But the percentage is just a percentage. So now as you grow an organization and infrastructure and people, those people are producing, and let's say it's $10,000 a month, they're producing whatever, right? Let's say you go from 3 people at $30,000 a month, let's say, and you're at 20% profit, so that's $6,000 a month. Let's say you go to 10 people, now you have $100,000 because they're each producing $10,000. Your profit's still 20, and actually as you grow, you might have leverages or efficiencies, so your profit might actually bump from 20% up to 22% on a larger number, right? So now you have 20, if it's $100,000 of producing on a 22% margin, you got $22,000 left over with to pay yourself each month, plus pump back into the business towards, new equipment, new software, make you more efficient, more advertising, right? Advertising costs money, right? Advertising on billboards or TV or radio or the internet. So that's what I would recommend. And if you got cash flow, you can have less in savings for a little while. Like I have zero issue when I'm doing some of these deals. I will write as large of a check as I can in, and for 2 weeks until I get paid again, until cash flow comes around again from the properties, I'll have zero in my bank accounts. I will write a check on this next deal. I'll write a check and I'll be close to zero until that deal closes in the next month when I get paid. Right? So when you start to achieve cash flow, that's why cash flow producing assets are so important. In a house, yeah, you might be able to build equity and get lucky and have a 3% annualized return or 10% annualized return, whatever, but it's not paying you cash today. Who is your favorite broker? And the guy that asked this question is Brad Smith, who's one of the brokers. He did 96 East and Springdale for us. But I thought it was an important question actually, because Brad knows this. Like, I'm not just using one broker. And like when I'm looking to sell a broker, just because Brad and I are great and we talk, we're buddies. He's done 2 great deals, brought 2 great deals to us, and is always bringing us deals. It doesn't mean he's going to be the guy that sells my deals, because he's got to be, he might be my favorite guy as a broker, whatever, favorite dude to talk to as a broker. And there's a lot of them out there. I got a lot of great, friends or whatever that you want, acquaintances that are brokers, but not one of you guys are going to get my business just because we're friends or because you're my favorite. Because the favorite is a deal on deal basis, and is what have you done for me lately? It's it's a whole picture, right? What are you bringing for deals? What how much is it costing me? What percentage are you taking and your firm taking when we go to sell the deal, right? I mean, just because we've had success in the past doesn't mean I'm gonna be married to that same person forever, right? And that's why I thought it was important. Like, you can't just use your uncle as your insurance broker. You might have to sever that relationship at some point because it's the best business move. Now, I'm not saying you want to shop around every single thing every 2 months, because you're going to ruin a lot of relationships that way and probably get people that don't want to work for you or with you that way. But it's good to spot check people every year, every 3 years, depending on what service it is. It's good. You got to keep people from getting too fat off of you, right? So I thought this was an important question to ask, because I know he was somewhat joking around and probably didn't think I was going to include it. And I don't even know if he listens to the show, but, just because someone is your favorite doesn't mean that's who you do business with. You have to make the best decisions for your business. Your business is, yes, it's a part of you, but it's not you. It's its own living organism, and it will die if you make, emotional decisions based on who your favorite person is, who your relative is. So you got to do what's best for that living, breathing organism that is your business, period, always and forever, or it will go away. How long are we going today? And this is like an hour and 10 minutes. How many questions we got left?
2.
How many people we got live?
6.
Okay, cool. Damn it, I forgot to do this on Instagram live today. How has adversity, and actually just hold on for those of you guys that are listening and or watching, I'm gonna get my Instagram live going here for these last couple
It
questions.
could possibly make this lag, but I'll let you know.
Wait, say that again?
It could possibly make the stream lag.
Well, not if I do it under
Data?
I'll just yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
So if you're listening, hold on. So I'm just going live here. Live. Hold on, I'm gonna do a comment live on YouTube.
Your neighbors are out running around. Nice.
They play a lot of hockey out there.
Yeah, that's what they're doing. They're plowing.
Hold on real quick if you're listening. I'm trying to pin this comment. There we go. All right. Let's see. We got a couple questions left. We've gone for an hour and 10 minutes already. How has adversity shaped your journey, and what are some of your tough moments? I mean, every deal is tough. Like, you go through every deal and you're like, man, I got tens of thousands or $100,000 on the line that are already hard in illegal fees, due diligence, and whatever, and it could all fall apart, and you might be out 10,000, 20,000, 150, 250,000, 300,000, but you have to be okay with it at some point. And that's why I think that actually the most successful people, even though society might label them as someone that's just cares all about the money, they actually care the least about the money than anyone else. Or let me put it this way, they care less about money from the standpoint of, like, they don't mind if they lose $200,000. It might be 50% of their savings that they have right now. They're not so attached to the money. They understand that getting the deals done and that the cost of business is sometimes things that just happen, right? So how has adversity shaped your journey, and what are some of your tough moments? So the tough moments, I mean, closing some of these deals is freaking hard. I can go back and think about every single deal that we have done, and there's been a time and place where I've been like looking at myself in the mirror, like, we're gonna lose $10,000 in this deal because we've already got 10. Maybe on the 4 units or smaller deal, we had $10,000 hard of due diligence and attorney's fees that if it didn't close, we were gonna be out that. There's deals that we've had, $500,000, $600,000 on the line of hard costs before we close, where the deal, I'm like, this deal might not close. We might be out $500,000. Now that has not happened yet. I'm sure it will at some point, but those are tough. Those are tough moments where it's like, man, I don't know that I want to do this anymore, right? You ask yourself that, like, do I really want to do this? Is this worth it? But then you just got to remind yourself, like, it's just a part of the process. And the adversity that we've faced, it's always taught me a lot more, and it's always made me do things a little bit different on future deals to try to negate the risk that I had out there on previous deals. And some of the things that made me feel like we were going through adversity, whether we were or weren't, because a lot of times it's just feelings. It might not even be the truth. You might not be facing that much adversity. It might just be how you feel about it. So the adversity, you're always going to face it. Anyone successful, it doesn't matter if it's in sports, in business, whatever your craft is, there's always adversity. There's always things that go wrong. There's always tough moments. That's life actually in general. Just look at life in general. There's tough moments, and the people that are able to overcome those are always people that become stronger and more successful in those areas in life, typically, if they don't let the situation break them completely. So as long as you bend, you don't break, you're going to be okay. And those tough times, they will go away at some point. You might have a long stretch where it seems like they never will, but they will at some point. Next question. How many do we have left, did you say?
The last one.
Last question. How can I raise equity as a beginner investor? 25 in California. I think I kind of hit on this one already earlier, so I think we just added it. But the big thing is get out of your comfort zone, get out there and share. Get out there and share what you want to be doing. Get out there, like being in California, like go to the coast, go knock on doors up and down the coastline because there's money sitting there, and you're gonna get the door slammed in your face a lot of times. But I promise you right now, you do it 100 times to 200, 300, 400, 500 times, you're going to find multiple people that will want to help you however they can if you show that you are 100,000% committed to what you are doing, and you work hard and you have great ideas and input, and And if you're just willing to grow and learn yourself, you're going to find people that will want to help you. So that being said, I just want to wrap up by saying, hey, 2020, this is the last time we're going to talk to you in 2020 as far as the podcast and the Justin Spaulding show. It's our second episode. Hoping to do this forward into the future. Please like it, comment, leave a question. Hope you leave questions for future shows when I ask for them and when we start to gather those. I'm excited to see where this thing goes. Our plan is to do them live once a week on YouTube. Hopefully get the recordings up on, Spotify, whatever else is out there soon. I don't know how long. Does it take long to set?
I don't know how that works.
So we got to figure that out.
Get your book.
Yeah. Get my book. Go to www.justinspaulding.com. I know we've had some definite shipping delays. Hopefully a lot of that stuff is going to be done with now, and we'll be back to regular shipping with Christmas being done. But definite shipping delays on that. But that being said, go get the book. We've had great feedback on it. I've literally had dozens of people in the last 2 weeks reach out to me and say, hey, your book and your free content. So basically paying me a total of $25 from the book, which $25, I'm not making the most amount of money out of all the things I have going from the book. The book and following me on social media and everything has made the world of difference to them in their investing life, financial life, money, learning, all that stuff, just self-growth. So would definitely appreciate if you just like the channel, follow me, share me with other people, join us live every time, listen to this stuff, putting it out there to be able to, selfishly help my brand grow, but also I love helping other people. So we want to grow this thing together. Would love to hear about your success stories. Love to hear your questions. Until then, this has been the Justin Spaulding Show, episode 2. We'll see you next week with Justin Spaulding, episode 3. We'll talk to you soon. Happy New Year. Have a safe New Year's Eve. Peace. I never know how to end.